Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Thursday, the 19th day of May, 2022. Get my keyboard out of the way here. Well, I hope everyone's had a good week so far. We live on the high desert, so we have lots of wind. And yesterday especially, it was really windy. I guess it's going to be windy again today, so which is, just life on the high desert, really. That's just how it is. But it blew. I have already transplanted my broccoli I grew them last year in fabric pots on my deck. And I have to say, they lasted clear until November. I was harvesting the side shoots off of them, the spears, clear into the first part of November. So it worked. So I'm doing it again that way this year. That way I can just walk out on my deck and get my broccoli for dinner if I want. So that's kind of cool. But I've got cabbage to plant, but I think it's supposed to be like, I don't know, 31 tonight or something is the low. So even though they're cold plants, I don't know how hardened off they are. They've been sitting out on the deck for a couple of days, so I'm sure they're hardened off enough now. But I'm gonna wait, I think, till tomorrow or something before planting them. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. If this is your first time here, welcome. I appreciate you coming by. I hope you'll click subscribe and come back. Let's see. What I normally do before I start the reading is I go over the esoteric influences for Thursday, Monday. Well, I do this Mondays and Thursdays, so I go over them for those days. You can find the whole thing over on the blog at Stepping Aside. The web address is imsteppingaside.com. You can click on show more below the video here, and you'll see. Well, there's a little section initially of how I do what I do and what my whole focus is, and then down below there's some links, and the link to the website is there. So, anyhow, but let's go ahead and take a look at today's esoteric influences. The 19 reduces to 1, so we have new beginnings, leadership, individuality, talent. The rune today is Perthro, and Perthro has to do with understanding fate. It also means birth, the womb, chance, cause and effect, synchronicity, and divination. The Geomancy rune for today is Kappa Draconis, which is the head of the dragon. It represents the north node of the moon. The Draconi, Kappa and Kata, they represent the nodes of the moon. Kata represents the south node, so the past or karma. And Kappa is new beginnings, the entrance on the threshold. The sun's in Taurus, the moon's in Capricorn, and the planetary governance for work and magic today is Jupiter. So you may be rather impatient when expressing new ideas and perspectives because it may seem that others either don't necessarily agree with you, or perhaps their expectations of you are unrealistic. And you may also find that your need to nurture others is not well received during this period either. This may be due to hesitance over embracing a new direction, or possibly lacking a shared understanding of the situation itself. However, the problem could also surround how others perceive your leadership or control. If you're unable to allow for the input of others today, you could be seen as too arrogant or dogmatic to hear their views. In that case, you're only limiting your own awareness and contributing to a challenging experience that's not ever going to yield results. So kind of take note of how you come across to others today, and try to do it in as non-threatening a way as possible. But, sometimes, especially if this has to do with work and you're in some kind of a supervisory role, sometimes you just got to tell people, look, this is what you expect, and this is what needs to happen. And but again, try to be nice. And then you'll probably get a little bit further than if you just, went in there and said, no, you're doing it my way. Even though that's really what you're telling them. There's just ways to do that and ways not to. So anyway, I'm going to cut the deck here in a little bit when we get ready. I'm going to go ahead and take a rune. The runes I do for the esoteric influences are not the ones that I do for this. So sometimes they're the same, though, which is kind of interesting. let's see what we get here out of the bag. Well, we have Rado. Now, Rado means ride. Think rider and horse. It's comprised by Isa, Isa, Laguz, Vunyo, Kenaz 3 times, forward 1 time and reversed the other 2 times. Well, reversed up here, and then this is kind of skewed. But some of these runes, unless, you're looking at simply Isa, which is just a line, you're looking at really essentially bind runes in and of themselves. They're comprised of so many different influences. Manas, for example, is really complex. Lots of different runes there. But Rado is too. But basically what you're looking at with Rado is you're looking at the process versus attaining the goal. Integration with others, rhythm, movement, journey, shared journey. But, if you're thinking about if you ride horses, which I don't, I mean, I did, I have, but I don't have a horse, so I don't ride horses all the time. Haven't in years. But the idea is you want that horse to go where you want the horse to go versus the other way around. My husband had horses we had a horse when he was growing up. And if the horse didn't want him on him, then to ride, on his back, then my husband wasn't getting up there. It just wasn't going to happen. He'd buck him off or whatever. And so, you have to establish that rhythm with the horse. And so eventually, when you do, then you don't need to do a whole lot to get them to go to where you need the direction you need them to go, right? So that's the idea behind Rado. It's having that rhythmic motion, that integrated motion with others. Right now I'm getting the rune together here. I'll get that right. Well, I think do we have a Missio? Let me see. Yeah. Missios, I'm trying to find it here in the little dish here. I have them all in. Oh, there it is. A Missio, well, I'll go back, especially if you're new here. Geomancy is an interesting type of divination tool. It can mean several things. It can mean ley lines. It can mean pendulums. But it can also mean, well, I do it in terms of runes, but you can take a handful of whatever and throw it down and count them. If you have an odd number, that equates to a single dot. If there's an even number, it equates to 2 dots. And so here, and I've gone ahead rather than doing that because it's messy and takes a while, right? Anyway, to count all of them. So I made runes. And you code them to earth, fire, fire, air, water, and earth. And you put them in that order. And so this would be the one for earth. And so there's a single dot there. And then on the other side, there's a dual dot. And that's what it came up today. And again, you put them in the order of fire, air, water, and earth. And that equates to, in this case, a Missio. And a Missio means loss. Now, its complement, acquisitio, which is you just turn it over. I mean, there's 16 runes technically, but realistically, there's only 8, especially if you think of it in terms of wholeness. And so, but in this case, a Missio is loss, acquisitio would be gain. And really, you're not necessarily talking about anything value judgment wise, like I lost something or whatever. It could simply be a decrease of something. Whereas acquisitio is gain. It could be an increase of something. So energetically, you can look at it that way as well. So if there's a loss here, it could be loss or a decrease in the rhythm that you have with other people, the integration you have with others. So we could look at it that way. So with the runes, I like to use them basically as the significator for the reading. Sometimes you can do that in tarot. If you want to do that, you can. You would choose a card that you want to be the significator, and sometimes you just do that as is. You can choose it before you start actually pulling cards, or I don't ever do it that way though. If I'm going to use a card as a significator, I take a look at what I have when I lay the cards down, and I decide, okay, what's the real focus of the reading, and that's what it means by significator. It's what's going to be the overall guiding force of the reading itself. And so since I do an integrated reading here between two different kinds of runes and tarot cards, then basically I let the runes be the runes set the tone for the reading essentially. This is really distracting me here. Let me get my Esoteric Influences out of the way. Get this over here. So if we're talking about integrated motion and process over the goal, and you're looking at a decrease with a missio of some kind, then obviously something is not, in other words, if you're collaborating with other people, maybe that's off today or something. So maybe we can see what we can do to get that back on track. Well, oh, it's a court card extravaganza almost. Well, we have we have the King of Wands, we have the Eight of Wands, and we have the Queen of Wands. So Wands depicts the fire element. We have two people not talking to one another here, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And then we have a lot of stuff coming in, a lot of things that are happening with the Eight. I'm going to take one more card at least. I generally don't take any more than 5, but I start out with 3. Usually 3 is enough, but not always. So clearly, I would say that we're on track with Rado and Amicio, that something's off in terms of collaboration today, because clearly, let's look at them. Well, actually, it's this way. Now, court cards are interesting, but before we really talk about them, look how they're not looking at each other. All right. So we have two people in authority. We have the King of Wands, rather. Now, to me, I tend to read the directionality of the cards, especially when there's people in them. That is, whether it's in the 10 small cards of each suit, or whether it's in the court. Even with the major arcana, I do the same. But they're not looking at each other here. You see the king on his throne. You see the lion here. You see the Ouroboros. And the salamanders grabbing their tails. That's what they are. Along with the lions. You can see the little salamander, the little elemental down there for fire. He's holding his staff, and he's focused on the past, basically. Now, the King of Wands is an authority figure. He's a counselor. He's a warrior. He can be very generous. He can be he can be like a mentor, or he can be bigoted and cruel. Any of the kings can. He's very dynamic, but right now he's focused on the past. So he's not, maybe he's bringing up stuff to the queen that has already been dealt with, and they're not moving forward. And he's not really moving forward. He's thinking about things that have already happened. And then we'll move to the queen instead of going to the Eight of Wands here. The queen is not really looking us in the eye either, although at least she's straight on, as opposed to the king when we're getting a side view of him. But we see the lions again. You see the lions up here, and you can see the possibly Ouroboros. It kind of doesn't. I don't think so though. It kind of looks like when I'm looking at it backwards here in the video screen, but I don't think so. She's holding some sunflowers. There's sunflowers on the back of her throne. You don't see that on the king. Now it looks like that's actually how it presents in the reading. But she's an interesting person too. She's strict, she's generous, she's talented, she's successful. Again, a woman in authority. And the interesting thing about court cards, they have a lot of versatility about them. You can either talk about them in terms of the individual themselves, or you can talk about the qualities therein. And I think that they share that sense of authority. So you could be in a situation today where a lot's coming in on you with the 8. This is swift motion. Lots of things happening. And there's a strength to it with the 8. There's a strength. 8 is also about leadership. It's about about material recognition and approval. But I think that the 8 describes the energy of both the king and the queen quite well. So I think that this is a really simple and an easy reading here today. I will take one more card though, at least, and see if we can get a little bit more idea of what the content of the issue is. But clearly, a couple of people in authority today are not talking to one another. They're not, the queen seems a little more content to do something positive here. I mean, it's not like she's kind of looking a little bit to the side, but she's a little more focused on the future and is just kind of sitting there waiting for the king to catch up, maybe. I don't know. I've said this before, I don't have a great feeling for the kings or the emperor in the tarot. I feel like they're not as steadfast as the queens might be. It's not that the queens can't have their own issues as well. It just seems like the kings are a little more caught up in their own stuff, and they're not as willing to, maybe it's that they're so caught up in their authority and their leadership that they don't really have time to think about anyone else. The only one that I would say that that's not true of might be the King of Pentacles, where his back is to the kingdom, but there's a lot of abundance. So it's either at the expense of the kingdom or he's gathering it for the kingdom. So there may be a little more of that. Being the earth element with pentacles, it's a whole lot more grounding. But with wands, it just depends. If you think about someone who's a Sagittarian, my husband's Sagittarius, they're very driven. They're very focused in one direction. Doesn't always see the bigger picture, but yet can. But when he's focused, he may not even hear me when I talk to him, because his mind is so focused in one thing. Whereas I see everything at once. And so you can kind of see the dynamic there. When things are not flowing well between the two of us, it's kind of like this, where he's focused on his thing, and I'm just like, okay, well, all right, I need you to kind of see the whole thing. And it's like, no. And but then I'm a Libra and he's a Sagittarius. See, it's just one of those things. But I think that what we're talking about here is when a lot's coming in on you, you've got to be a little more together. You've got to be focused on the same thing, and aware of the same thing, and being part of that collaborative process together. And so it suggests today, and the cards do as well, that there's some decrease to that. That's not really happening. So you can either approach it really one of two ways. You can either get it together and try to make that happen, or you can just acknowledge that, yeah, we're not on the same page today, and give each other space to figure it out and to do your own thing. Maybe there's just too much going on in each person's head, and you have a hard time getting together with one another on something. So kind of retreat to your own spaces and respective spaces, and just give each other time to get out of your own head spaces and get the energy coming together a little bit better. But let's see, I'm going to take the 13th card. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. The deck is still so slick. Sometimes I'm so tempted to just go back to the other Rider-Waite deck that I've used forever. At least I can hang on to the cards. This is a newer deck. Here we have the star. Now, the star is let's see, the 17th card of the major arcana, so another 8 energy. Only here we have the goddess pouring water into a pool. She has 1 foot in the water, and then she's kneeled down on the ground. So she's also pouring water into the onto the ground. We see the stars above. Anytime you see the larger star, that's worth 10. So 10 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, for a minute there, it looked like 8. It's early. But here we're wishing upon a star, where it's dreams, it's dreams and hopes and wishes and transformation and joy and optimism, insight, inspiration. So I think that what it's telling us is again, to kind of see the bigger picture, that if collaboration is difficult today with someone else or with a group of people, such as at work, or it could be your family, people just aren't on the same page today. The authority figures are also not on the same page because they're kind of going off in their own direction here, mentally. But to have that insight and to have that greater understanding that it's just the moment, and that the goal really is integration with others. Rado would be the ultimate goal. If you're looking at this in terms of as above, so below, the Elder Futhark rune, Rado would be as above. That would be the spiritual side of self, the soul side, higher awareness, higher self, however you want to regard that. And then the Geomancy rune would be the earthly side of self, or the ego. And, the ego's pulling against that integration with other people. And especially if this is 2 authority figures at home or in a job or what have you, they're just really not integrated together. And so either work on that or just let it be how it is and understand the bigger picture. The issue with the star, we can hope for that and you can try to get back together, but there's just days when, I use my husband and myself as an example. We're both strong personalities, and we both have our own ideas, and we each have our own needs. We want to go do what we want to do, and once that's in motion, well, there it is. A Sagittarian, like I said, my husband is. That's the archer. So when that arrow goes, it goes, right. And that's what this card reminds me of. Is he's always got a lot of things going on, and he tries to get them all done at once, and of course that doesn't work. And so, but he's driven, right? And to accomplish everything that he's ever needed to accomplish all in one moment. And so for him, he has to learn that he has to drop his expectations, right? And for me, as a Libran, I have to just say, well, I'm just going to look at things in balance, and I'm going to see the bigger picture, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm not going to worry about him. And that's fine as long as I don't need him to do something. But if he's really busy, then it's kind of hard to get him to stop, even though he will. But it interrupts his flow, basically. It's like stopping the arrow from going where it needs to go. And so I have to pick my moments when I think he's in a better space, if I really need to take some of his time, because otherwise he can't get what he needs to, he gets his whole, it's like his train of thought gets interrupted, right? And so it's hard for him to get back to things. And so it's that understanding that I mean, we've been married, let's see now, we're coming up upon 43 years. Well, no, we just had our anniversary. It is May. That's right. I'm thinking it's April. It's not, it's May. Yeah, we were married on May 5th in 79. And So we've been married for 43 years, and along the way you learn that about one another, right? How you can interact with one another, the rado of it all. Um, and so I think for today, you may experience something like that. If you do, again, you can try and talk about it, but it may not result in anything. It may just be that each person has their own thing, and in all likelihood, the female part of it, like the queen in the mix, is probably just gonna have to go. Okay, man, go do what you got to do. And like right now, my husband is. Let's see, it's just now 7 o'clock in the morning, and my husband is up at we have flood irrigation, and he was working on the ditches yesterday, and weed eating around them and all of that. And he's got to go up there today and finish some of that, uh, and at least on the side ditch, and so that the flow of the water goes right, right. And so he's doing that. He's up at 6 o'clock this morning, and he's heading out to go do that. So again, he's doing his thing, I'm doing my thing, uh, and sometimes you just got to let people be in their own space and let them finish what they need to do, and then it may be easier to come back together in some kind of harmony, um, together. But if not, just have that insight that's just what happens, and don't take it seriously. It's just something that uh, allow them their space, allow them the differences. If this is a work situation and you've got a couple of supervisors or whatever that don't seem to be on the same page, well, sometimes that happens, and you just have to be patient and wait it out. Eventually, they'll figure it out that hey, we've got to be in sync about this, and we might get further if we do. But if it feels like collaboration is off, it probably is, and just kind of let it be for a little bit, and it'll likely find its resonance again, if you don't force things. So anyway, when I pulled the cards, I just had to laugh. I'm thinking, oh yeah, okay, I know who these people are. So, but he was out all day yesterday doing yard things. He was doing the irrigation, and working on the ditches, and mowing all the lawns, and I hardly saw him at all yesterday. So finally in the evening, when we had dinner, and then he went out again for a while, and then came back in. But I think he got in about 8:30 last night. So he had lots and lots and lots to do. So this is almost like it was. This is. Well, I mean, it could be from yesterday for me, but also for today, because he's still got a whole bunch to do today. But then so do I. So anyway, I was writing. He was working on the property. So it all kind of worked out. But again, today, if this happens, it's just a thing. I mean, it could be something that is indicative of how you interact with your partner. If this is a partnership thing, that maybe you're not so much on the same page all the time. You don't have that collaborative experience with one another that you need to have. But again, I think with Amicio, it's just suggesting that today it's just less. That's all. So don't take it seriously, and unless it becomes a serious thing, I wouldn't. I would just see it for what it is, and but have Rado as your goal ultimately. To understand that sometimes it's not so much the end result, but it's how you get there together that matters. So anyhow, thanks a lot for watching. And look for all the stuff to come out on Saturday night on the blog. Also over on Patreon, I post the correspondences for Work and Magic and all the recommendations. There won't be that many this next week because several of the days have very bad favorability, and on those I just tell you to meditate or do some research, whatever. But sometimes on the unfavorable days, magic doesn't go anywhere. So anyway. So, but otherwise, there's I don't know, three days I think of next, or 4 days of next week that I do have some things for you that you can do on each day. Couple of the pieces I do on Medium, they get posted on Saturday night as well. So I guess that's it. I have one more thing to write today. I've got to do the Esoteric Influences for next week. Also, the newsletter goes out on Saturday. If you want to sign up for that, but you can go over to the blog and just scroll down a little bit. It's on the left side panel. Just put your email address in there, and it goes. And you can always unsubscribe at any time. It's like you get overwhelmed by email like I do. I don't even know where half of it comes from. I really don't. I don't know why I'm getting it. I don't know. So if you want to look at it for a while and then you don't, that's fine. You can resubscribe later. It doesn't matter. You're welcome to do that as well. So, but anyway, everything comes out on Saturday nights. So that way you have, because everything begins on Sunday. All the stuff I do, the repetitive stuff I do, it's always from Sunday to Saturday. So that's why I like to get it out on Saturday nights. So you have it. And so check all that out. And sometimes I write other things as well, so you never know. Sometimes I do a reading. Sometimes I haven't done a rant in a while, but I feel one coming on, and so I'm sure it'll be there in a while. So anyway, thanks for watching, and have a good weekend, and be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.